Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's show is being pre-recorded. I'm talking to two audiences, the newbies who may have just learned about the deep corruption in our money system, and the rest of you who have joined us sometime in the past 15 months that DCTV has been broadcasting this weekly series. A very warm thank you to DCTV and to Carmen Stanley, studio producer and director, Mo Jackson, audio, Mark Wesley, teleprompter, and Crochet Starnes, who's here as the floor director. In the first part, I'm simply going to talk to you from the heart about the fork in the road that we're all facing, and then the rest of the show will follow the teleprompter that I've prepared before the show about the history of the United States and its money. When I started working on the teleprompters, some people were wondering who was writing them, whether this was a script that somebody was giving me. And anybody who knows me knows that I don't follow anybody else's script. I've gotten a lot of trouble because I just really have to do things the way I believe they need to be done. That's just the way I am, and that's the way it has to be. When we're dealing with a global corporate control system that has been in place for centuries, there's really no way to deal with that group if you're going to be following orders. And I know that there are a lot of people that are called controlled opposition. They make some good points, and then they have a hidden agenda which is being dictated to them. But you can see from my history, as I've been working in the World Bank for 20 years, and the Board of Governors, which is the most important group, has been working alongside of me, and they know that I'm there as their, it's now called overseer mandate trustee, but I'm their lawyer. And that's what I do, is I simply consult with them and take their position. This past week, somebody called up and tried to get me to negotiate on the world's gold. They said that we were going to be facing a very tight, ticklish situation, and that I really needed to be working with the elites. And I said, maybe that was a good logical position, but unfortunately, I had no mandate to deviate from what the Board of Governors is telling me, and I sent that gentleman packing. And I'm sure that there's going to be some discontinuity coming, because we in the world are going to be getting our gold back. It's very clear that this gold belongs to everyone on Earth, and the Board of Governors, 188 ministers of finance and development, they're the ones that are going to be deciding what to do with it. They actually have already made the biggest decision, and that is to put the gold in the currency. But we have to switch from the paper currencies. The chances that we do this are 90 to 95%, because this coalition on the Board of Governors is much stronger than the network of global corporate control. But you're going to be sitting and watching alongside of all of us what's going on, and you're going to hear very transparently, because I put all of the information out on a daily basis. So that's the reason that I'm speaking without using the teleprompter, is because you can't really say these things convincingly when you're reading them. And I wanted people to know that this is the way things are. Now, in this next week, I'm going to be traveling. I'll be going to Canada, because I'm going to be with my family. My first job is to be with my family, and I'm going to be online, but you won't see as active blogging as you have up until now. And this is actually a very good opportunity, because what you will then see is you will see that it is really all of humanity that is taking back the gold. Everybody is deputized to make all the comments on my social media, and there are a fair number of shills. I try to keep up with them, but people will be alerting me. They'll be doing a lot of work alongside of me, because that's the way we're going to be going forward in the global currency reset. We're all going to be working together as a team, and I've introduced many of the people that I'm working with. Some people I don't even know that I'm working with. But as I said, we are all in this together, and we are all going to be working together to set our world right. The network of global corporate control has been very visible. It wasn't visible for the longest time, but it's now very visible. And there's no way it can continue as we now know that it exists. Now, there were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. That's amnesty. We are not going to be putting people in jail. If we threaten to put people in jail, we will not have a transition. We will all end up in a disaster zone. That's the only way that this can work. When you think about it, you'll realize that. So when you hear anybody saying that somebody is putting people in jail, you know that they're there to confuse you. There'll be a lot of confusion. And therefore, what I've been suggesting to everyone is that they get themselves into small groups and work through these issues together, because you really do need to be working together. Also for your own protection, because there, as you know, there are capabilities that follow what you're doing and what you're saying. And you want to be working in a group so that that group can't be shut down. That, a lot of people wonder, how is it that this lady, me, is still alive? And that's the reason why, because I've always been working in a group of other people. And the only, what would happen if I were taken out? Somebody else would take my place, because there is not a day that goes by that I have not fully disclosed exactly what I've been up to. So the only thing that people are going to gain if I'm not there is there'll be somebody else who will be taking my place, and maybe that person won't have established as long of a track record with the Board of Governors, and so the Board of Governors may not have as much confidence in them. But I can tell you the Board of Governors knows full well what they're getting with me, because I was in the World Bank for 20 years, and I've been tested many, many times. People have tried to bribe me. People have tried to get me to give up, and it hasn't worked. So that's really all I have to say on the extemporaneous stuff. So we can get back to the teleprompter now. We're all working and learning together. I was looking for a picture to demonstrate this, and I found this picture that taught me a new word, adinkra. This is a geometric object that encodes mathematical relationships between supersymmetric particles. The adinkras are named after symbols that represent wise sayings in West African culture. This adinkra is called, and I'm going to obviously pronounce it incorrectly, Nea anem no swa a ohu, which translates as he who does not know can become knowledgeable through learning. The information that I'm about to share with you came to me because I'm sitting in the center of the international financial system and acting as a switchboard operator. That is what I'm going to continue to do during the global currency reset as overseer mandate trustee. The biggest decision about replacing paper money with gold minted from the International Monetary Gold Reserves has already been taken. The most important currency, though, is the local currency that each village and town will issue. I want to begin by describing a court case that I put out on my social media on August 6th. It was brought by John Parks Trowbridge, Jr. It can be summarized very briefly. The federal judges are all lying. All United States Department of Justice attorneys and United States district judges and magistrate judges work for the same for-profit corporate employer, the District of Columbia Municipal Corporation. The district courts are just a legislative branch corporate debt collection forum, masquerading as a judicial branch Article III constitutional court. The rest of the United States district courts outside the District of Columbia have no constitutional authority to take territorial and personal jurisdiction. General ignorance of the jurisdictional provisions of the Constitution is what has led to the disappearance of judicial branch Article III constitutional courts and proliferation of legislative branch Article IV territorial courts called United States District Courts. The information about the Payzurs came from a reader at Rumor Mill News, and the history of money is taken from a website that has a link in the teleprompter. In October 1781, when the Earl of Cornwallis capitulated to the British East India Company employee George Washington, the name of the Virginia Company was renamed. The new secret corporation was now called the United States of America Corporation and Body Politic. The terms of the capitulation was that the secret corporation would continue in existence forever. The arrangement that the King or Queen of England would continue to receive 20% of the revenues from the Virginia Company as per the old charter of 1607 would remain in place. In 1737, the British Crown Post appointed Benjamin Franklin as Postmaster of Philadelphia. In 1753, Franklin became Postmaster General of America for the British Crown. In 1757, Franklin went to London as representative of Pennsylvania, and by 1763, he represented several other colonies as well. In 1775, Franklin became United States Postmaster General. The Universal Postal Union was established in 1874. The UPU was established 3 years after the United States Constitution of 1789 was replaced by a second secret constitution, foisted upon it when the Revolutionary War debts fell due. The second secret constitution was not ratified and was not signed. Benjamin Franklin renegotiated the Revolutionary War debts in the Treaty of Paris in 1783 so that these debts would fall due in 1871. Benjamin Franklin knew what was going to happen when the Revolutionary War debts fell due in 1871. The deliberations of the Constitutional Convention of 1787 were held in strict secrecy. In the notes of Dr. James McHenry, one of Maryland's delegates to the convention, here is what happened when anxious citizens gathered outside Independence Hall in order to learn what had been produced behind closed doors. A Mrs. Powell of Philadelphia asked Benjamin Franklin, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" With no hesitation whatsoever, Franklin responded, "A republic, if you can keep it." The Payzur family signed a contract with Benjamin Franklin in 1785 to handle all of the communications and transportation in the secret corporation, again forever. The Crown Prince of France, Louis Charles Bourbon-Capet, was made manager of the United States Corporation in 1805. At that time, the Crown Prince was 20 years old. He had been in hiding in the city of London since both his parents were beheaded during the French Revolution in 1793. His father, Louis Charles Bourbon-Capet, that's Louis XVI, and his mother were of the Louis Charlemagne bloodline, Marie Antoinette von Habsburg bloodline. That's Queen Elizabeth's bloodline as well. The Payzur family lost control of the Virginia Company in 1933 when the company had to file for bankruptcy. All of the executive order issues by Roosevelt disenfranchised Louis Cass Payzur family from the corporation in 1933. At that time, it was taken over by Colonel Leroy Springs, the founder of the Spring-Made Bed Linen Factory. As most of you know by now, the Harp brothers used the electronic geometrics from HARP to mind control us. One of the best ways is our spring-made resonance mattresses. Anyway, the founder of the spring-made bed linen factory in Lancaster, South Carolina, Leroy Springs, Colonel Springs' granddaughter, is the main person in charge of the corporation and was head of the Federal Reserve Bank. Her name is Crandall Close Bowell. Does that ring another bell? Prince Charles's wife? I don't know if Crandall is still alive today, but she was on the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Charlotte, North Carolina, and was CEO of the Spring-Made Bed Linen Company. The Federal Reserve Bank evolved out of the North Carolina Gold Company chartered in 1899 in Charlotte, North Carolina. The First National Bank of Charlotte was the bank that made the secret gold bullion payments to the Queen of England for 190 years. At any rate, the Federal Reserve Bank of Charlotte, North Carolina, makes the secret electronic funds transfers to the City of London today. This is the 20% of the tax revenues that will forever go back to the Crown of England via the original contracts with the Virginia Company. In 1607, King James already knew that there were going to be 48 contiguous states in North America. Remember also the gateway to the sun in Peru had 48 glyphs around the major figure, Quetzalcoatl, the snake ruler? Anyway, King James knew this because it was he who chartered the Virginia Company, and he knew in 1607 that there were going to be 48 states because there were 48 Merovingian families who signed on to the Virginia Company charter. So where are these signatures today? They're held secretly. Each Merovingian family was to have its very own state as its kingdom. There were some secret trusts executed with the Pope of Rome also, such as the states of Maryland. And I do believe that's why they to this day also keep the trust so secretive, for the few oligarchical monarchs control and rule assets, which is why these trusts are not found in the ordinary law schools, except Cornell. Benjamin Franklin knew what was going to happen when the Revolutionary War debts fell due in 1871. The deliberations of the Constitutional Convention of 1787 were held in strict secrecy. In the notes of Dr. James McHenry, one of Maryland's delegates to the convention, here is what happened when anxious citizens gathered outside Independence Hall in order to learn what had been produced behind closed doors. And I think actually this is something that I've read earlier, so we can skip through this. Just keep going and a little bit later. The Continental Congress adopted the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution of the United States, on November 15, 1777. However, ratification of the Articles of Confederation by all 13 states did not occur until March 1, 1781. Here's the chronology from the journals of the Continental Congress. June 11, 1776. The Continental Congress resolved, quote, that a committee be appointed to prepare and digest the form of a confederation to be entered into between these colonies. On the 12th of June, 1776, the committee members were appointed, quote, to prepare and digest the form of a confederation to be entered into between these colonies. On the 12th of July, 1776, the first draft of the Articles of Confederation was presented to the Continental Congress. On November 15, 1777, the Continental Congress adopted the Articles of Confederation, and on the 17th of November, 1777, the Articles of Confederation were submitted to the states with a request for immediate action. On June 25, 1778, a committee of 3 was appointed to prepare the form of a ratification of the Articles of Confederation, and on June 26, 1778, the Articles of Confederation were ordered to be engrossed. On June 27, 1778, the first engrossed copy was found to be incorrect and a second engrossed copy was ordered. On July 9, 1778, the second engrossed copy of the Articles of Confederation was signed and ratified by the delegates from 8 states: New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and South Carolina. On July 21, 1778, North Carolina delegates signed the ratification of the Articles of Confederation, and on July 24, 1778, Georgia delegates signed the ratification of the Articles of Confederation. On November 26, 1778, New Jersey delegates signed the ratification of the Articles of Confederation. On May 5, 1779, Delaware delegates signed the ratification of the Articles of Confederation. On March 1, 1781, Maryland delegates signed the ratification of the Articles of Confederation. The Articles were finally ratified by all 13 states. There's a lot of dialogue about the role of the Founding Fathers, who called for a stronger federal government. They were agents of the group that we know as the Network of Global Corporate Control. In any event, they won the day. On February 21, 1787, Congress approved a plan to hold a convention in Philadelphia to revise the Articles of Confederation. On May 25, 1787, the Constitutional Convention convened at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. On September 17, 1787, after 3 months of debate moderated by Convention President George Washington, the new United States Constitution, which created a strong federal government, was signed by 38 of the 41 delegates present at the conclusion of the convention. As dictated by Article 7, the document would not become binding until it was ratified by 9 of the 13 states. On December 7th, 5 states, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, and Connecticut, ratified it in quick succession. However, other states, especially Massachusetts, opposed the document as it failed to reserve undelegated powers to the states and lacked constitutional protection of basic political rights such as freedom of speech, religion, and the press. In February 1788, a compromise was reached under which Massachusetts and other states would agree to ratify the document with the assurance that amendments would be immediately proposed. The Constitution was thus narrowly ratified in Massachusetts, followed by Maryland and South Carolina. On June 21, 1788, New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify the document, and it was subsequently agreed that government under the United States Constitution would begin on March 4, 1789. In June, Virginia ratified the Constitution, followed by New York in July. Here's what happened to get the United States into that scam called country debt. During the American Revolution, a cash-strapped Continental Congress accepted loans from France. The Continental Congress and French government began to secretly ship war material to the American revolutionaries in late 1775. This was accomplished by establishing dummy corporations to receive French funds and military supplies. It was unclear whether this aid was a loan or a gift, and disputes over the status of this early assistance caused strong disagreement between American diplomats in Europe. Arthur Lee, one of the American commissioners in France, accused another, Silas Deane, of financial misdealings, while the third member of the commission, Benjamin Franklin, remained aloof. Lee eventually succeeded in convincing Congress to recall Deane. The early French aid would later resurface as one of the disputes behind the 1797 XYZ affair that led to the quasi-war with France. During the Revolution, the French government also provided the Americans with loans, eventually totaling over $2 million, most of which were negotiated by Benjamin Franklin. John Adams also secured a loan from Dutch bankers in 1782. After fighting between the Americans and the British ended in 1783, the new United States government, established under the Articles of Confederation, needed to pay off its debt, but lacked sufficient tax authority to secure any revenue. The government struggled to pay off the loans, stopping payments of interest to France in 1785 and defaulting on further installments that were due in 1787. The United States also owed money to the Spanish government and private Dutch investors, but focused on paying off the Dutch because Amsterdam remained the most likely source of future loans, which the United States successfully obtained in 1787 and 1788, despite its precarious financial state. Under the United States Constitution of 1789, the new federal government enjoyed increased authority to manage United States finances and to raise revenues through taxation. Responsibility for managing debts fell to Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton sought additional loans on Dutch capital markets. These private loans from Dutch bankers also helped pay off loans owed to the Spanish government, back pay owed to foreign officers, and United States diplomatic expenses in Europe. In 1795, the United States was finally able to settle its debts with the French government with the help of James Swan, an American banker who privately assumed French debts at a slightly higher interest rate. Swan then resold these debts at a profit on domestic United States markets. The United States no longer owed money to foreign governments, although it continued to owe money to the network of global corporate control. In 1816, a new privately owned central bank was founded in America called the Second Bank of the United States. Let's talk about Andrew Jackson. When the American Congress voted to renew the charter of the Second Bank of the United States, Jackson responded by using his veto to prevent the renewal bill from passing. His response gives us an interesting insight. He said, "It's not our own citizens only who are to receive the bounty of our government. More than 8 million of the stock of this bank are held by foreigners. Is there no danger to our liberty and independence in a bank that in its nature has so little to bind it to our country? Controlling our currency, receiving our public monies, and holding thousands of our citizens in dependence would be more formidable and dangerous than a military power of the enemy. If government would confine itself to equal protection, and as heaven does its rains, shower its favor alike on the high and the low, the rich and the poor, it would be an unqualified blessing. In the act before me, there seems to be a wide and unnecessary departure from these just principles." In 1832, Jackson ordered the withdrawal of government deposits from the Second Bank and instead had them put into safe banks. The Second Bank's head, Nicholas Biddle, was quite candid about the power and intention of the bank when he openly threatened to cause a depression if the bank was not rechartered. We quote, "Nothing but widespread suffering will produce any effect on Congress. Our only safety is in pursuing a steady course of firm restriction, and I have no doubt that such a course will ultimately lead to restoration of the currency and the recharter of the bank." By calling in existing loans and refusing to issue new loans, he did cause a massive depression. But in 1836, when the charter ran out, the Second Bank ceased to function. It was then he made these two famous statements: "The bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it." That's what Jackson said. And later, "If the American people only understood the rank injustice of our money and banking system, there would be a revolution before morning." Thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's segment is about how we are all working and learning together in the global currency reset. As they say in West Africa, he who does not know can become knowledgeable through learning. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.